Right. Well, thanks very much, and thank you very much to 43 Air School for the invitation. It's certainly appreciated. It's something I didn't expect. Certainly didn't expect when I made the decision to write a book, and come on later as to why I did that. But the reason for this talk and this afternoon is to talk about resilience, because ironically, when the book was published, September 2019, it was before the world of pandemic and COVID had arrived. So I was writing about 6 decades of aviation and the turbulent changes within aviation. And little did I know, or any of us know, what was about to happen. So resilience is an interesting subject because it means different things to different people. And as students of 43 Air School, what I wanted to do was just to share with you some of the things that I found worked for me. And it's really, really important, especially those of you that are instructors or those of you outside of the school that are watching this. You must appreciate that this is what worked for me. It might work for you. You might find it useful. You might find that you can add it to other things which help you navigate through your aviation career. Because at the end of the day, it is changing all the time. The world changes, and the industry is no different. So the most important thing to sort of get across right from the beginning is that the aviation industry is resilient, that the industry we're in is resilient, because at the end of the day, we're not going to go back to using ships to run out of Cape Town, run up to Southampton or Liverpool or anywhere else and take weeks to do that. We're going to use airplanes, and aviation has a foothold globally, and a positive one, that connects people. It brings trade, it brings commerce, it delivers just-in-time procurement for different industries. And as we're seeing at the moment, it moves vaccines around the world very, very, very quickly. So we've got to be realistic and recognize that the industry is resilient. It will bounce back. And there's always been challenges. Challenges have been there forever, whether it be conflict or whether it be global events. We had SARS before. During my lifetime in my career, we had the 9/11 events. There's lots of things that can impact the industry, and it can either be regionally or globally. And it's important that we understand that as an industry, it bounces back, and you must understand that. The challenges are there. And what I thought I'd do is just give you a quick overview of who I am and what my background is. And it's not meant to provide you with a blow-by-blow of my career, but it'll give you an idea of where I was and how I dealt with different things as they changed. So my father was a flight engineer, so I grew up in aviation as an industry from the word go. He was on DC-7s, on Bristol Britannias and Boeing 707s before finishing on DC-10s. But he was with one of the original charter airlines that in the 60s were running around for freight around the world. And as a child, my brother and I would end up being handed from station engineer to station engineer around the network. And we would end up in Dar es Salaam, we would end up in the Bahamas or in New York, wherever, being handed over to another station engineer to catch up with our parents. So you've all heard of Army brats and Air Force brats. Well, my brother and I were airline brats. So it didn't take rocket science and for me long to realize that I enjoyed being around airplanes. I grew up with it, and it was an environment I was comfortable with, and I was mechanically minded, so I did an apprenticeship. I did an airframe engine apprenticeship, with a company some of you will know, British Caledonian Airways. They were taken over by British Airways quite a long time ago, but they operated a fleet of scheduled services as well as cargo operations. They used to move racehorses around the world, as well as freight and operate passenger services. I'm pretty sure they operated into Lagos, into, I think it was Accra, certainly into the Gambia. I know that Banjul, I think, is where they went to. But I did an airframe engine apprenticeship and became licensed as an airframe engine and an American A&P mechanic, and worked in the hangars and on the flight line. And then I became a propulsion power plant engineer, which sounds very, very grand. But basically, I had to do and look after the engines on the wing. So I was responsible for DC-10 CF6 engines and looked after them when they were on and off the wing, which involves trend monitoring and analysis. So those of you that are engineers within the school that are watching this, just take note, because engineering is a very, very good, solid rock to start from, a position to start from within aviation as a career, because it opened up a lot of doors, as we'll discuss in a minute. But from that, I just couldn't get enough of aviation, and I flew as a hobby. I used to use my concessions to go out to the States and hire airplanes and fly airplanes. And in the end, I decided to make the break. And I started in the hangars as an engineer when I was 18. I started flying when I was 20. And at 25, I just decided I wanted to have a go at flying commercially. And I made the break. And the important thing I really want to get across to you guys listening is that there will be times when you are faced with decisions that you have to make. And I was in a very, very comfortable job. I had a well-paid, good, secure position within a very, very, very good airline. And I resigned and I went off to pursue the flying. And my logic was that I could always go back to a toolbox. I could always go back to working in hangars. I could always go back to working on airplanes. And if I had to, I would work on cars. So don't be afraid to make those choices sometimes that give you an opportunity to do something. Because I spent 3 years then flying Beech Barons and Cessna 182s, and I had a blast. I had 3 years sort of bush flying for some guys, and it was the best 3 years to start an aviation career that I could possibly have wished for, because it taught me a lot of things, and I was able to progress quite quickly into a King Air, which gave me a little bit of turbine time. And it wasn't a lot, but when I was then back in the United Kingdom and looking for employment, it allowed me to get a job on a King Air. And from that, I was able to progress into a citation. So now I'm in the right-hand seat, co-pilot on citations, running around Europe, getting experience. Didn't have a lot of money in my pocket, didn't matter. I was getting experience, and I was able to then progress. There was so much change and turmoil going on within the industry at that time. A lot of deregulation in the United States, airlines collapsing, airlines merging. I ended up then with an airline which operated Boeing 737s. So I was then in the right-hand seat of a 737-400, and it was the very, very first 737-400 that was in the UK at the time. And it put me into a glass cockpit, semi-glass. In those days, it was a PFD and an ND, and the rest were all traditional steam gauges. But it opened up another avenue and another skill set. The airline I was with was owned by a corporation, and I was converting onto the DC-10, and I was 30 years old then, converting onto the DC-10. And I couldn't have been happier, because I was in a position that I was very, very comfortable with. And we were finishing off our training, and the airline collapsed. So there I was with 2.5 hours in my logbook on a DC-10, which was absolutely useless, had no value, or so I thought. But obviously it did, because what it did was it showed future employers that I could go through training courses, I could do type ratings, and I was therefore potentially attractive to an employer. So from that, I had an opportunity to join British Aerospace, who manufactured aircraft, and they put me on the Hawker 125, or de Havilland 125, HS 125. It's known by various names, business jets. And because of my engineering and my flying qualifications, they got me involved in the development of the Hawker 1000. So even though I wasn't trained as a test pilot, I flew with the test pilots on the certification program for the Hawker 1000. They then trained me to do the production flight test on the Hawker 800 at Chester, a place called Harden, North Wales, where they manufactured them. And I had another very, very enjoyable period of my career where I flew demonstrations, deliveries, customer training. We would go with aircraft for 3 months at a time, all over the world. We'd go with sales teams, and we spent 3 months in Papua New Guinea, 3 months in Japan, 3 months in China, 3 months in South America. We went all over the planet. So what was happening without me realizing it is that I was building up a layer, a web of experiences that would carry me through as things changed. And sure enough, they did, because British Aerospace sold the corporate jet division to Raytheon, which owned Beechcraft, and they moved the entire production across, not surprisingly, to the United States, and shut the operation down in the United Kingdom. So even though I had an opportunity to go to the United States, I also had an opportunity to join a relatively new airline that was bouncing around and making waves back in the late 80s, early 90s. So 1993, showing my age now, I joined an airline you may have heard of, Virgin Atlantic. And at that time, my CV looked like an airline directory. I mean, I had companies and airlines that had come and gone. I remember flying with someone who laughed and said, you know, he had 12 airlines and 12 companies that had folded or disappeared underneath him. And he said that it was a little bit, you know, like changing deck chairs on the Titanic, that during your aviation career, you're going to have challenges where things don't work out quite the way you thought. So I didn't think Virgin Atlantic would, I mean, I hoped it would last, but it was a small airline. They had 4 aircraft, and they employed me to go on to the first A340-300s. So I was right at the beginning of that growth, where the Airbus products, the A340, came into operation. The 300, I was the first officer on the 300, and very quickly there was an opportunity, because they had one A320 to get a command on the A320, and I took it. And again, there's another point there. When you get opportunities for command opportunities, it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's a turboprop, what it doesn't matter. If there's a command opportunity with your employer, take it, because it gives you command experience, and then from your command experience, you're then in a position to progress as you go through your career. It wasn't long, I think a year, I was back on the A340 as a captain, and then they did something which is typical Virgin Atlantic. They bought a bunch of 747 Classic 200s from Cathay Pacific, and because I had 2.5 hours DC-10 in my logbook, they asked if I would like to go on to the Classic. So I had flown Boeing before, obviously, but I went on to the Classic and had a command on the Classic, which then led me to the 400. So I then flew the 400 and then went back to the Airbus fleet for the 340-600 because I was involved in aircraft acquisitions with Virgin Atlantic, and using the engineering qualifications as well, and also did some of them, not all of them, but some of the customer acceptance flight tests in Toulouse on the Airbuses. So the engineering and flying combination gave me that resilience. It gave me that ability to get involved in things which I took pleasure and enjoyed doing, but it gave me a career that I embraced, and that ended up being 23 years. I did 23 years with Virgin Atlantic, and then where are we? Nearly 5 years ago now, I decided to retire early from flying. I found it harder to bounce back. Those of you that are in the airline industry already will know what I'm saying with long haul flying. I spent a lot of time traveling the world, and I found towards my late 50s that I was struggling with bouncing back, and I decided that I would retire early, which is what I chose to do. That then allowed me to pursue other opportunities. I still do some instructing, instructing on Cessna 172s with the G1000, which is very nice, and also pursue some business opportunities. And I have a small consultancy business, which allows me to be actively involved in supporting not just general aviation, but business and corporate operators with what they're doing, whether it be aircraft acquisitions or managing an airplane. So where does this take us, and where are we going with this? We're talking about resilience. And the thing that I learned is that it's really important to have a checklist. Okay, so whilst I'm talking to you, I've got a checklist because there's some things I wanted to touch on that I think are important. As I say, they worked for me. So just take them with a pinch of salt. And it's really important that those of you that are students, don't hesitate to ask your instructors or anyone you come across in the industry for their thoughts on things, because sharing that knowledge and sharing experiences and what works and what doesn't work is really, really important. We can't do it on our own. I didn't do any of this on my own. It was through teamwork and through working with other people. And the things I want to share with you are things that I learned from other people. So it's not me being clever and say, this is what you need to do. You need to have this, and this, and you'll go through your career no problems at all, because it doesn't work like that. But what I have learned is that the most important thing, and top of my list and top of a lot of people's lists, is attitude. Is you've got to have the right attitude to what you're doing. That you've got to take it seriously. We do play for keeps in aviation. The consequences of mistakes can be catastrophic, and I'm sure that within your training you cover threat, error management, and crew resource management, and all the different sort of skill sets that are in addition to handling an aeroplane or maintaining an aeroplane or managing an aeroplane. So your attitude, you've got to be quite open-minded, and you certainly learn this when you are in the left-hand seat, that if you've got someone with you on a heavy crew who's just joined the company, and this is their first or second trip since they've been released onto the flight line, listen to them, because they might have a piece of information or something that can help you and protect you. And the attitude is so important with what you do. So the next thing I've got on my list, on my checklist, is just try to do everything you can to the best of your ability. It's so important that we all have days when we don't feel like we really want to give it 100%, but if you can try to have that mindset, that attitude that you'll try your best and give it your best, whatever it is you're doing. It could be as an engineer, it could be just pushing back an airplane or meeting an aircraft. And you've got to concentrate on what you're doing and give it your best. So no one will criticize you. You know, even in the simulator, when we did simulators regularly, when we made what you could classify as a mistake or an error in a procedure, or did something that didn't go quite as well as we would have liked. If we had the right attitude and we did the best and needed assistance to fill in the gaps to make it better, that's a positive attribute. So just take your training for what it is, and your entire career is about training. Never stop learning. So take it on the chin. If you find you trip up or you have something that causes you an issue, you're not on your own. You've got support. And I know that at 43 Air School, you've got that. You've got a lot of experience within the facility. And it might be that your particular instructor doesn't have the solution that you need to get through to the next stage with what you're doing, but there will be an instructor that has that experience or knowledge. So if you give it your best, then they will give it back to you. So that's important. Just try their best. And the next thing I've got on the list is nothing to do with flying, nothing to do with airplanes. It's about us. We're people. We're human beings, and you've got to look after yourself. So your well-being, making sure that you look after yourself, is really important. And the people around you, whether it's friends, family, students who are on the course with you, students who are on the course a year above you, or following you, or instructors, they're there. And they're there, and you're able to turn to them and get support from them. So if there's anything that you need, some advice on, and I'm talking about, personal issues here as well. We learn very, very quickly in aviation and in the industry that wherever you go on this planet, wherever you travel, you take yourself with you. That you're still there. So anything that's worrying you, if you go away and something's worrying you that's happened at home or something personal, that baggage goes with you. So look after yourself, your well-being, your mental health, your physical health is really important. And the last thing I put here, which I was fortunate to work with some incredible people, is that just stay grounded. That none of us are God's gift to aviation. That we all make mistakes, and you can go from hero to zero very, very quickly in this industry. And just make sure that in order to be resilient as you go through your career, that you do stay grounded. I know it's difficult to say, but it's really important. Having some humility with other people and with yourself. Other people is what I'm talking about. It's really important. When you're with a crew and when you're with a team, okay, they want you to be obviously competent at what you do, but they also want you to be a person and to be fair with them as well. So just stay grounded, and it will stand you in good stead. The reason for wanting to write the book, 20 West, it's 20 West, but basically it covers 6 decades of turbulent change within aviation. It's because I wanted to write not about myself. It was about history, about the industry, and about the changes that have taken place, and about the different things that I witnessed and what was presented to me during my career. And it's not meant to be a history of aviation. It's a snapshot. It's a picture of the things that I saw, some of which have gone into the into the realms of history. And from that, it led to me writing for various magazines. If there's one little bit of advice I'll pass on, is there's a website, Airfax Journal, which is in the United States. They publish some superb articles, and they just collect a lot of material. Some of it's general aviation, but they have a lot of other subjects as well, technical, and it's a wealth of information. That's a good one. I've been writing for Aviation Business Magazine in the Middle East, and that's been interesting because I'm retired technically. I'm able to provide some articles which are opinion pieces. They're not meant to be opinionated, which is completely different, but articles on subjects which just gets the brain going and makes people think. So if you want some more information, there is a website, 20westbook.com, 20westbook.com, and there's some information on that as well. So going back to my checklist, one of the things the school wanted me to do was answer some questions which have been raised. And the question that everyone asks is what's your favorite aeroplane? And I'll kick off with that one straight away. General aviation wise, the favorite airplane was definitely, and still is, whenever I can get my hands on one, is a Cessna 182. That is the Toyota Land Cruiser of the aviation world. That aeroplane, when Cessna built that, they got it right, which is why it's still in production, and it stood me in good stead for 3 years. Took me into some very short, hot and high strips, and it carried me out as well, which is good. So I've got a lot of respect for that aeroplane. It can bite, as can any aeroplane, but I do have a soft spot for the Cessna 182. The airline aeroplane, which I'm sure anyone listening to this from South African Airlines, from SAA, will understand what I'm saying. It's got to be the 747 Classic, the 200. I love the Airbus. I do not have anything bad to say about the Airbus products, fly-by-wire. You know, you have to work hard at any airplane to get the best out of it and to work with it. But there is something about the 747, and I think because my father was a flight engineer, and the 747 100s and 200s had flight engineers, I enjoyed working in that environment. I found that even though your workload was high compared to glass cockpit, when things got a little bit busy, or if you had some technical issues that you had to deal with and your workload went up a notch or two, with 3 of you, with the flight engineer, it worked. It allowed you to manage the solution. As a captain, you could work with the flight engineer and deal with the technical side. You could communicate with the cabin crew, and the first officer could fly the aircraft, and you had some cross-checking with monitoring. With a 2-man glass cockpit, or 2-person, 2-lady glass cockpit airplane, the problem is when the workload goes high, is splitting your self into monitoring and managing as well, and that takes a lot of discipline and training, and there's a lot of emphasis on that. Some aircraft manufacturers do it very, very well, and some others make it a little bit more challenging sometimes with their procedures. But the answer to the question is the 747 Classic. The other question I'm always asked is, do I miss airline flying? Yes, I miss the people. And that's why when I had this invitation to speak to you today, I said yes. I had hoped to be with you down in South Africa. That was planned for April last year. Events overtook all of us, and I wasn't able to do that, but I do look forward to, when the opportunity arises, to coming down sometime, because the people side is what aviation and the airline industry is all about. It's people, and I miss the people. That's the part I miss. The other question, which is one that often pops up, and it's usually not from students or from you guys, it's usually from parents. How does my son or my daughter do what you did, have the career and the variety that you had? And I can honestly say with hand on heart, I don't know. I do not know the answer to that, because there are no rules. The industry is changing, it's evolving. What works for one person doesn't work for another. The opportunities presented themselves at certain times that I was able to benefit from. But whether you choose general aviation, business, corporate flying, military flying, airline flying, regional flying, freight, that's your call. But what I would say is, whatever the opportunity is that's presented itself to you, take it. I've seen so many times people, have an opportunity to fly, for example, a 747 freighter. Okay, 20 years ago, they would go, no. I want to fly, scheduled passenger airline. Now, right now, at this precise moment in time, the only jobs going are flying freighters. So you have to be careful what you wish for, because the world changes, the industry changes, and if you're passionate about aviation and passionate about flying, I've always said, I'd fly a Cessna 206 full of fish if I had to, because I enjoy flying. It doesn't matter, and I have. I've done exactly that. So you do what you need to do at the time, and the times change, and you need to adapt with the right attitude. So the final question, which is a really good one, which came in, is just asking where I see aviation going in the future, and do I look at it as not being as exciting as it has for the last 60 years? And the answer is definitely not. The aviation and aerospace industry is dynamic, it's resilient. And when you look at those video clips of SpaceX, landing, back on launch pads, sending Dragon capsules to the International Space Station, you look at what is being done with electric propulsion, with 750 horsepower engines, electric engines being bolted to de Havilland Beavers, seaplanes. There's so many things going on within the industry. The carbon fiber and composite technologies, it's moving so fast that I see the future as exciting. So in order to be resilient with where you're at compared to where I'm at, I'm sat here at the end of a journey, and you're at the beginning of a journey, is that if you want to be resilient as you go forward, approach it with the right attitude, do the best that you can with whatever it is you do choose to do, and just make sure that that you've got that grounding, that humility with what you do, and the world is your oyster. It's there to enjoy. And the one thing I didn't do was let geography constrain me. So if there were opportunities to go overseas or to go to other continents and countries to do things, I did. I flew. So you have lots of opportunities. You're very, very fortunate to be at 43 Air School. Those of you that are students, whether it be engineering, technical, or as pilots, or as instructors with aspirations to fly for the airlines or other operators in the future, it will come back. It will come back. It will come back, and the challenge will be managing success. And I wish you well with that. And I really appreciate the opportunity you gave me to speak to you this afternoon, and wish you all well. Thank you.